Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and welcome to episode 67, I think, of The Knife Guy. If you are new to my channel, you just came out of some weird corner of the internet and you have no idea where you are, I'm a knife guy, knife user, knife collector, knife enthusiast, knife enjoyer of many sorts. We are all knife guys and gals in this super duper weird EDC and knife world. We all go down our own unique paths, but oftentimes those paths intersect and we experience a lot of the same stuff. And that is exactly what this series is all about. I like to pick up knives that are either mine or some of my generous viewers and flip them and just kind of, handle them and whatever while I just ramble about a lot of these things. Each episode, the attempt is to find a unique topic every episode. I do this once a week on Sundays. Sometimes they overlap, whatever. I just talk about whatever I feel like talking about. Thank you so much to my generous patrons who are supporting me right now. If you'd like to get your hands on some of these cool stickers or some other benefits, there is, of course, a link down in the description. Your support would mean the world to me. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. So what are we talking about today? So I have some flashlights out here. And if you've been following my channel here recently, you'll know that I kind of went flashlight crazy. Actually, these are all of the ones that I acquired. We have the MSR D4V2. This one's been modded with the short body. We have the Lumentop FW3T, another MSR D4V2, but in titanium. We have the Noctagon KR4 in titanium, and then we have the MSR D4S V2, which is the big, just a big version of the D4V2. I locked in on this whole, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Let's see if we can get it. Yeah, I locked in on the whole colored LED thing. The power of flashlights is interesting. The Anduril user interface, which is what all of these use, is pretty cool. But I really locked into this multicolored LED thing. Leave that guy running right there. And I brought these up here a lot lately. And my viewing audience doesn't like to watch flashlight stuff as much as they like to watch my knife stuff. I mean, other channels who are specific to flashlights, they attract a lot more flashlight people, and that's perfectly fine. I show what I find interesting on this channel, and the progression of the channel is based on what people like and what I like, so that everything works out for everybody. So what I'm saying is that the fact that my flashlight videos don't do quite as good, it's not stopping me from being interested. We can't help what we're interested in at any given time. Now, do I like flashlights nearly as much as I like knives? No, not even close. My main obsession is still folding knives. That will still be 95 to 99% of the content on this channel. We all go in phases. I look down at the comment section and I see somebody comment and they say something like, I really enjoy X element of X type of knife because I think this. And you get some general, discussion, and every now and then you got somebody who flies in and goes, I absolutely I don't ever go with X because I believe Y and only go for this type of thing. And when I hear that, I'm sure some people are more locked into one thing or another than other people, but we're all human beings and our tastes evolve in different ways at different speeds, right? We've talked about evolving taste before, but depending on what phase you are. Like if you're brand new to the knife world and you've decided that you have absolutely locked in on one thing and you're never gonna sidestep from that thing, you are kidding yourself, my friend. You are kidding yourself, because as you discover new things, I mean, depending on what type of foundation you have to begin with, user, collector, enthusiast, it is very likely that the next day in the knife world, whether you're on Instagram, YouTube, whatever, you're going to discover something that appeals to you that you never knew might appeal to you. And then what can happen, as you can see here with flashlights, I locked into it. Before the multicolored LED thing, I was like, flashlights are flashlights. They look cool. I kind of like that they make some of them out of titanium, and it's kind of neat how powerful they can get, but I feel like my interest in them is very limited because there's just not enough there to bring me enough joy to get me to buy a whole bunch of stuff at once. So I thought, yeah, it's never going to happen. The simplicity of the multicolored LEDs, for me, for whatever reason, that was enough for me to go on kind of a spending spree. These are not expensive, but they're not inexpensive either. I think these are $60 to $70 lights in aluminum. Titanium version of FW3. And with this original, the standard version is FW3A, it's aluminum, but the titanium version is like 90 bucks. D4V2, 100 or so. KR4 is about 100. They're not, you know, what most people define as cheap, but that was to all of a sudden just be like, yeah, I want all that stuff, right? Yeah, I never would have guessed. That can happen to anybody. Some people are more resilient to it, some people are less resilient, but to say that you absolutely will never do something or could never be interested in a certain type of object because they are limited as far as what you assume is going on with that part of that world or that object, right? You'll never be interested in it because they only do this or you feel this way about it. That can change in a heartbeat. For example, you know, the Spyderco thing, I always talk about Spydercos. My initial impression of Spyderco knives were, wow, they are ugly. And you know what? I still think that. Spydercos are ugly. But I love them now after having handled them, right? Love them. I went on a Spyderco kick for a while. Zeroed in, just like with the flashlights. If you guys haven't picked up on the topic today, it's discovering something you never thought you'd be interested in and then zeroing in on it to the point where you just like, you focus on that thing, just specifically that thing for a while. And then this weird phenomenon happens with a lot of people. It's a revelation for them. It's new to them, right? So then their obsession with it to sort of develop their own reaffirmation in that interest is to decide that that element is superior versus anything else. We all do that sometimes. Like, I think that way. I used to think that way about frame locks. Discovered a frame lock for the first time in the ZT0562, and at that moment, it was all of the elements in the 0562 that made me love it. Also, the fact that it was basically a hinder, which is the thing that I really wanted but couldn't afford at the time, right? So all those elements came together. This is my first frame lock, and then I just decided in my head, I was like, this is the best lock. It's not true. I don't think any lock is the best lock, but at the moment, I was like, I remember telling people like, there's no better lock than the frame lock for strength to manipulation ratio or whatever I convinced myself at the time. It was reaffirmation. It was just me like wanting to love it and loving it and just wanting to block everything else out because that's what I was into at the time. I still like frame locks. They're still most organic, you know, this is what I'm used to. I've handled probably more frame locks, I think, than anything else, especially here recently. And so that's what I was into. And people do that. They lock into something and they convince themselves that that is the best thing, right? But I think what we have to realize is that inevitably that whatever it was that we got from that element will wear away. You'll get, you know, it's fleeting, diminishing returns, right? You get less and less, and we naturally seek the next thing. Or if we're not seeking it actively, you are seeking it subconsciously. There's definitely like a space reserved in my brain that's just like on the lookout for other stuff. I'm not even really aware of it, but when I see it, I know it. That's the part. That's how you know that that part of your brain is active, because you stumble across. We've all done this. Stumbled across something, some object or some element of an object that we're vaguely familiar with, and we're like, I like that. I want to experience it. I didn't even know that it was something I wanted to experience, but now I want to experience it, and then you get it in hand, and if it really takes off, if the fireworks all go off in your head and you're like, wow, this is awesome, you start to seek out other things that have the same element, and you go on a kick for a while. Maybe it's with a brand, maybe it's Spyderco, maybe you go on a Hinderer kick, right? Maybe you go on an automatic kick. You're into side opening autos, right? When you're into side opening autos, your world becomes about automatic knives. When you talk to people, you know, in your personal life who are also into knives, or if you talk to people on Instagram, you're all about autos, and you start coming up with reasons why automatics are better in a utilitarian sense, or, you know, more justifiable than you previously, you know, maybe you find reasons to convince yourself that you have made the right purchase. The truth is that I think it's perfectly okay to think like that for a little. I mean, to recognize that it's a kick, and also to understand that that kick will end. I know that there are a lot of people, like, I got some people in my life who are much older, and they're like, I have only ever collected slip joints. That's all I'm interested in. I'm only interested in the old school, right? And that's fine, and maybe they still do enjoy that stuff. But in every single circumstance with those people in my personal life, I'm lucky. I've got a lot of people in my personal life who are into knives, but I've also kind of forced Like I force the interaction. I'm like, oh, you're into knives? Let me show you this. Let me show you this. All right, we all do that. But in every single circumstance, I've managed to show them at least one thing that they didn't know existed or didn't know that they might be interested in, and then they became interested. Non-knife people suddenly becoming interested in folding knives, that's a key point there. I've got a friend here that I turned into a knife person. It was like, one day he was like, knives are just cutting tools. You can buy them for $5. Why would you ever spend more? And that gentleman now owns 3 Spydercos and is looking at his 4th and has really locked into Spyderco. And I told him, I said, Spyderco is a great place to get into this. It's also, it's kind of a damning event horizon because you're on a slippery slope, buddy. A lot of people start with Spyderco or something, maybe the less expensive Spydercos, right, or whatever. But that'll change. It'll evolve. Like, you'll become interested in different elements, right? I had a note here, something I wanted to talk about. Oh, the obsession with steel. I think a lot of us, for at least a brief period of time, for me it was a long time, I had a steel obsession where if it was a new steel or there was a suggested performance surrounding the steel that caught my attention, I would buy a design that I wasn't necessarily even interested in just to get that steel. And yeah, you convince yourself that buying a design this is funny. I've actually convinced myself that a design that I didn't like was good simply because it had a steel that I was interested in, even if I would never put that steel to enough of a test to really be able to definitively say that it was good, right? But because it was using this new crazy super steel that was, in all honesty, marginally different than some of the other super steels that I'd handled, I had somehow convinced myself that the design was good. Or my eyes had been open to elements of the design that I was not previously aware of. So there's a teeter-totter there, right? Some of it is gaining false confidence in something that you really aren't into because it has some element that you're after, right? Or some of it's like, well, actually, I'm kind of totally, I understand this design better because it's got this other element that I want. So there's pros and cons to it, like anything. Something else people definitely do is, just specific types of deployment method. Let's talk about locks and deployment methods, right? We're talking about, let's use 3 different categories. OTFs, look at my OTF, right? First time you handle a Microtech OTF and you decide to go ahead and buy one, you bet you're going to convince yourself that this thing is giving you some sort of advantage. That is a natural conclusion for people to come to. I've been there, right? A bunch of you guys have been too. You feel that power. You get a hold of something that you have been told for so long is illegal, and it has that clickiness. It has all the movie elements to it, right? And you're like, well, maybe there is an advantage to this automatic thing. It's really, a lot of it is just the feeling that it's giving you, and you're into that thing right now. Right? Automatic OTFs definitely do that to people. I'm not saying they're bad choices. I'm saying that is a really powerful element. That's one of the really powerful things that suck people in, and they're like, that's all I'm going to buy now. I'm only going to buy OTFs because those are the coolest things ever, and they're now I'm discovering that there's all this tactical advantage or utilitarian advantage to being able to do this one-handed. You're all about that thing, right? Another thing that does this to people, the triad lock. You experience that triad lock for the first time. A lot of people, they get their cold steel knife, they sit down on the couch, they open it and they close it, and they feel like click, clink, click, and then they watch a bunch of YouTube videos about testing, they watch a bunch of people talking about this is the only thing that I'll try, and then they zero in on that. And they're like, this is the best lock, I'm never going to buy anything other than this, it's the strongest thing, and they'll never ever put that knife through a test that's really going to definitively say, right? And my opinion on that is, it probably is the strongest lock, right? But no amount of human force is ever going to be able to test that. And on top of that, the lock itself is so strong. I've said this so many times. The lock itself is so strong, you'll break every single other part of that knife before you break the lock, right? And a lot of times, the same parts of the knife that would fail on a triad lock will fail just as fast in a regular folding knife that's a frame lock or a liner lock or whatever, right? Snap the tip on some of those. There's definitely other blades that are just as robust as some of the cold steel blades, but you're more likely to break some other elements of that knife you're gonna destroy it just as fast as any other knife. And great, now you've got a knife that's still locked super solid, but it's unusable because of some other element that failed. A lot of people don't think about that. They just zero in on that one part, right? and then they're euphoric with reaffirmation on this element, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay. I love the cold steel Triad-Lock. It is awesome, and in some cases there is an advantage there. I just feel like it's a much smaller, the parameters for it being really advantageous, like where you need a folding knife and not a fixed blade, but you need it to be just strong enough and just convenient enough. But it does that to people, right? And then deployment method, for sure. Deployment method, 100%. People only into flippers, only into thumb stud openers, only into glassy smooth stuff, only into drop shut action, only into the thumb holes, whatever, right? You go on a kick with that and you convince yourself that that is the primary, most advantageous means of deployment. That there can be no better for the longest time, and I still kind of feel like this, like just using Spyderco knives. Let me get out my most carried knife right now, still a Para 3. I've become so used to, you know, the manipulation of the compression lock in combination with this thumb hole. I've convinced myself that, you know, there's no better you know, means of deployment, just for getting the knife out of your pocket and using it, putting away, right? There's no more natural movement, no more convenient movement. It's just, this is it. So I've just convinced myself of that. But I also, at the same time, I'm realizing that's just your thing right now until you discover that something else. So sitting here and saying that it is absolute and that there can never be anything better, or convincing yourself, maybe you're not even like saying that specifically, but you might be subconsciously thinking that. And it's important to recognize that there will come a time where that is no longer the case. And you might fight, here's where you'll fight it. It's when other people are saying it, something's being blown up, or what people like to say is it's being overhyped, right? A lot of times what that is, when you come to that conclusion, is you don't want something to change. You don't want your perspective on something to change because you feel like your opinion or your feelings are being challenged on that subject, when in fact it's just stubbornness for lack of having to, lack of experiencing the thing that everybody else likes. And for whatever reason, we all do this. We like to feel like we're unique in that we're resilient to whatever is popular. And sometimes fads occur, sometimes things are overhyped and they are blown up and it's meaningless, and people really, you know, there's like a cult following behind something, and then people can see through that and it's like, no, that's marketing this or that, you know. Maybe even in that circumstance you experience that element and end up actually liking it. That's totally fine. Maybe in that circumstance it isn't hype and it actually is something that is beneficial. It actually is a reimagining or an evolution of something that is beneficial, and your stubbornness is keeping you from experiencing this joy that you never knew you would experience, right? So I guess ultimately what I'm trying to say is I never try to think of my own opinion on something in the moment as absolute. I always try to keep a small portion of my brain, you know, open to the idea that there can be better things. The ultimate design of any one thing has not been found. It's, in fact, I think it's kind of arrogant to assume that the best version of anything has already been created. I think that's still, I don't think that we as human beings are able to comprehend something like that in the moment. Honestly, I think in the grand scheme of things, I think we're all, even the most intelligent of us, and I'm, you know, if you want to know where I put myself on that spectrum, I would say average or below average until I don't consider myself to be hyper intelligent, right? But intelligent enough to know that things will change, things will evolve, right? Even the most intelligent of us, right, in the grand scheme of all the things that have happened and everything that will happen, I think we're all pretty, you know, we can only see so far right in front of us, right? And so our, you know, understandably our opinions and our tastes are developed by those things right there in front of us. Right now, I like these colored LEDs. I like Spyderco knives, still like frame locks, right? Do I think something's going to come out that's going to change that in the future? God, I hope so. What a boring world to live in where it's like, nope, I only like this and I'm never going to, right? That would suck. I'm not going to like it. Maybe there's going to be a part of me that's like, oh, I thought this was the best and I don't want it to be, you know, I don't want the limelight on this thing to, like if tomorrow some company like created something that everybody was saying this is better than the XM18. This is the XM18 evolved, and it's not made by a hinderer. It has all these elements that are better. Every last little thing is better, better, better. My initial, I would be like, whoa, 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 whoa. what's all this hype, right? What are all these claims? That can't be the case. This is the old, right? Because I'm a Hinderer guy, right? And I'm gonna be because that's my thing, right? But until I experience it for myself, I don't know. I'm just like, I just want the thing that I like to be the best. And the thing that I thought was the best in my mind, I want it to stay the best, and I'm going to be a little bit, resistant to the idea of something claiming a crown over that thing, right? So, wow, this was an intense episode. Guys, that's it. We don't need to talk about this anymore. Let me know your feelings on this. I always like to hear what you guys think. Those of you who made it all the way to the end, leave your comment down below. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this episode of The Knife Guy, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that metal. I know people probably really wanted me to get this one out, so I'll show it here real quick. I never know where the cards, I'm trying to talk, so the cards come up the last 20 seconds, so I'm trying to talk for a bit so you guys actually have a chance to see this one. We'll talk about this one in the future. Anyways, click on that metal complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.